Just can you take us back to when you were 20? What was your vision there? Because all this, what I've seen about very successful people is that they actually always had this ingrained, like you just said, they had some idea that this is what works, or this is good for me, or this is my passion. And then, of course, one thing is knowing it, and the other one is acting upon it, right?
Right.
So you had definitely walked that path, right? So, but tell me, the 20 years old kid, what was in his mind that got you to this point?
So maybe I'll go back a little further because I think, thinking back, so I grew up in Austria, in Vienna. I was born there.
Okay.
So actually, German is my mother tongue. It's kind of a bit
Okay. Wow.
different.
Interesting.
My parents were musicians, which is why they were in
Okay.
Vienna, and I studied music.
Of course.
And
Okay.
I was the only Chinese kid, probably in a 50 square mile radius in Vienna. And we're talking about the 70s here, right? And
Yeah.
and,
Sure.
and early 80s. And I think where this path started for me really was, not fully recognizing, of course, who I was. And I was like, obviously, really a kid, like, 10 years old. Moving to, when I was sort of 12 or 13, or maybe a little earlier, I started coding, and I uploaded some software onto what was then known as CompuServe, which was a pre-internet type of service. And the software was a MIDI software, which allowed people to compose.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Music. Yeah.
I just started telling people, hey, if you like my software, go send me some cash. I never thought anyone would send me money. It was just bragging rights. And then before, just a few months or so, I started receiving checks in the mail, right? And I didn't have a bank account. And I think, and that also led me to a job at Atari very soon after.
Okay.
And here what was interesting, it didn't matter that I was of a different sort of ethnic background. It didn't matter that I was a child, right? Basically, through the lens of the computer, skill was the only thing that mattered, or how
Mm.
you communicated and what you did. And I think that while I didn't fully understand that thinking until maybe later, but it was sort of that sort of, I guess, equitable lens where I saw a path
Mm. Mm.
where I wasn't restricted because of who I was, which I think definitely in Austria. And again, I wasn't subjected to, very sort of, Austria wasn't, at least for Asian people, very racist. Not that, but it was just, there was an innocent, what I could sort of innocent racism, ignorance, more like it, right? So the
Mm.
opportunities were capped. The things they think that you do, at the time, it was like, oh, so which restaurant do your parents own? No, 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 not all Chinese people have restaurants, right? But again, it's that kind of environment you grow up in, and I think that path has been sort of similar. When I go back to the 20-year-old kid. So later on, I went to the US to study computer science because Atari was like, well, you need to sort of be properly trained. Atari basically went under, and I started a
Mhm.
business entirely virtually with six other people, and that business was acquired by SGI. And again, everything was done online. We were then early days internet, and I moved to Hong Kong through happenstance, and actually an acquisition. But anyway, and when I was in Hong Kong, because my dad's from Hong Kong, I ended up having a permanent identity card. I could just live here, and I realized nobody had internet, so I just started an ISP, and this was in '93. So I was so that was basically sort of the beginning of the sort of actually pre 20-year-old journey where I started one of Hong Kong's first internet service providers, not realizing at the time that there were only 30,000 people on the internet globally. Right, right. I mean, there was CompuServe and AOL, but that wasn't really internet, right? And
Mm.
really probably a terrible business idea because you still have to educate people. Didn't know anything about it. When you go and put up the web page to go online, there was not much to see, right? It was like kind of like blockchain, frankly, sort of 6-7 years ago. And for me, it wasn't even a choice. It was just, this is the right way to go. We have to go online. It's a better place, right? Open source, there's great communities. I made friends online, right? I was playing online games like multi-user dungeons. So I was just in it, right? And again, it wasn't a strategy. It wasn't a, here's the master plan. This is, whatever. It just felt right. It was where I wanted to be. It was where I met the most interesting people. And so I thought everyone should have this. So let's go
Mm.
build an ISP to bring everyone in. And I think this is kind of the path which sort of later on we sold that business. It's during the dot-com height, and then I started a business which basically sort of commoditized email which was eventually sold to IBM. And it was kind of the same thinking, and I think the driver, which we hadn't really articulated until later, was that I think where I and us as a group feel most comfortable is that if we can do things with impact and purpose, we're happy to do that. There are many things we tried to do with impact and purpose that didn't work out quite so well, right? We were very focused on edtech, for instance. We were very early with sort of augmented reality in 2004, 2005, right? And again, I think the vision for that was probably correct. I think VR and AR had a place, but it was just too early, and it was difficult to sustain for us. So I think we knew what was right, but just when and how and timing. And I think age and wisdom does bring that when you kind of can put that into perspective. How you feel, whether you're sort of purposeful and passionate about it, I don't think that should change, right? Because if that's what you want to do, then you'll do that. But finding the right timing to do it, and sort of, and also, we're better connected. As a kid, you don't have the capital means, you don't have access to financing, you don't know how to make a pitch, right? You're just, I used to have very long hair as well, right? So this hippie kid that's out there telling us about the internet, 25 years ago, sort of, proclaiming that it's going to change your life is like, what? Right. So, all of that stuff, refines over time.
Yeah. Impressive, man. And that it doesn't surprise me or it didn't when you talk about your parents being musicians, because there is something about your demeanor and the way you express yourself that is very artistic.
Oh, thank you.
I can, I can. I was like, it's not the tech kind of person approach, even vocabulary or way of forming sentences. So, do you play any instruments?
So piano, flute, and cello is what I was studying.
Of course. Yeah, sure. Wow.
But that was, now, I mean, this is not obviously what I do for a living.
No, I know. Yeah. But okay. Wow. Fantastic, man. Machine, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead, bro.
It's like you're like a modern superhero, like literally,
Exactly. That's why I just keep asking and asking questions, man.
Cool. So I guess, back to modern day, right? You're talking about all these successes, and you mentioned a few projects like Sandbox, a lot of these. I was also